welcome everybody to the Elders of Zionism podcast. That's Elders of Zionism podcast, formerly of the Daily Cheat Sheet. And we encourage everybody to give us those 5-star reviews, subscribe to us everywhere. We're on every platform, video, audio. It's greatly appreciated and thankful. Good friend called me last night, Ron, and he's like, I love the new show. I'm going to spread it with everybody. I was like, way to go. Thank you. And I want to thank David for helping edit the episode the other day. I got to be honest, until my friends' kids were telling me about audio issues, I always just sort of ignored them. I just was focused on the content. I'm very glad they did, but David did an amazing job. In Golan's absence, Golan will be back in a couple days. And there is a lot going on in the world. And I feel terrible for Guy because I think his head is going to explode with all the information he needs to take in and is trying to decipher. And there is a lot of stuff going on. Fair to say?
I would say that a lot of stuff is an understatement today.
Okay. But first, I want to get to something that nobody seems to be covering. And I think it's extremely important, which is this terrorist plot that was meant to happen at the UFC the other night. What was it? 25 people were arrested. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have all the information in front of me. Now it's being reported that one of the mothers was actually the one that called the police about her kid, and they found this out. So good for the FBI for actually following this up. We've seen many stories, Guy, where the FBI doesn't actually follow this up. In fact, every terrorist plot that's gone through, the FBI knew for it beforehand. So good for Kash Patel and the FBI for actually following up on this story. And it looks like, it looks like when you read their manifesto, it looks like they're using the Tucker Carlson. It looks like a Tucker Carlson opening monologue.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary for a number of reasons, not the least of which is this is very uncharacteristic of what we know from right-wing terrorism. Right-wing terrorism historically has been actual lone wolves, people who are radicalized. So, they often self-radicalize. They often suffer from mental illnesses, actual mental illnesses, not just Islam. And they act on their own. What we're seeing here was a plan that seemed to be in no small part inspired by October 7th, by the way. The coordination of the bombings, the assault, and the aerial assault was very, very sophisticated for domestic terror. And it was coordinated between a large number of people. That's, again, when we talk about acts of terror, particularly in the United States, that's relatively new.
But inform people what you're talking about. So basically, this guy had $3,000, right? So from his graduation fund, graduation money, I guess, and he used that 3,000 to spend it on ammunition.
So he spent it on firearms and ammunitions, but the plot, as it has been described so far, which obviously, take it with a grain of salt, but the plot, as it was described so far, actually occurred in multiple stages. It began with an aerial assault using drones were using explosive drones, which were supposed to disorient and create panic in the crowd. The second stage was supposed to be snipers with predetermined high-value targets who were supposed to use the chaos to target the high-value targets. And the third was supposed to be an actual sort of incursion or an assault, right? Which is why do I say that it's reminiscent of the tactics that you see in the Middle East? Because that's what you saw on October 7th. First, you saw the hang gliders, then you saw the trucks, then you saw the invasions of the towns. It's what you see happening in Lebanon today. It's that coordination of the aerial assault first, the disorienting assault first, with the sort of planned and sophisticated follow-up, not just opportunistically reveling in the chaos.
And they also had safe houses. I mean, this is high. I mean, you're talking about young people. I mean, you're talking about the safe houses on a property, I believe, in Nebraska with 6 acres, and then they had the backup safe house. But we're not talking about the most important part. Is it was all supposed to be against those that have been pro-Israel, who they perceived to be pro-Israel. Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee, was on the list. Obviously, Trump was on the list. Vance was on the list. Musk was on the list, I believe. I think Bibi's on the list, but I don't know how they would have gotten to Bibi since he. I mean, maybe with AI, he was at the UFC fight. But again, go, Guy, the thing that nobody's talking about is this was aimed at anybody that was pro-Israel.
Well, it was aimed first and foremost at the White House, and specifically within that at people who are pro-Israel, which I think very poetically illustrates what we've been talking about for some time on the show, which is the relationship between those two things, the anti-Americanism and the anti-Israelism. Despite the fact that this weekend it does seem like Netanyahu and Trump might have wanted to go into that ring on their own.
I think that might be one of the best lines you've ever had. And but add on to that the fact that we know that there is an active shooter in Toronto, a hired hitman, I guess, that's being paid to shoot at Jewish establishments in Toronto. And none of
A
this is
network of hired hitmen.
a network of hired hitmen. Thank you for correcting me because I was not aware that it's actually a network of hired hitmen in Toronto that are being to shoot at Jewish establishments. You're not hearing anything about this.
Which is very similar to what was uncovered in Australia earlier in the year, where there was a number of organized crime attacks on Jewish institutions that it turned out were being coordinated by Iran. So it's nuts. And what I will say is that the difference from my perspective when I'm looking at these three different incidents is the terror ringleaders hiring people to commit individual acts of terror is something that we kind of expect at this stage, right? If we're honest, we've been talking about it on the show for some time. The internal, the domestically bred, coordinated, sophisticated terror attack that these people were planning on the White House, that's new. And one of the things that one of the real tragedies of this is we've been talking it has been discussed for a very long time that in the absence of something changing in the political discourse in America, this would emerge. And for the longest time, it hadn't been the right had not radicalized like that. Now we've got the San Diego shooters a couple of weeks ago. Now we've got this. We're seeing a very rapid radicalization of the horseshoe right. And again, they're not conservatives. These people don't hold conservative values. They're not Republicans. They're not MAGA people. These are the same online radical lunatics that you find on the online radical left, just with a slightly different favorites list on their bookmarks. But it's happening very quickly. It's escalating. It's escalating incredibly quickly, and we got lucky. We
Yeah,
got lucky that kid's mom decided that it was that she'd do the right thing to do, because a lot of kids' mums wouldn't have.
you're 100% correct. And we also are blessed with somebody like Kash Patel and his FBI that actually listened and followed up on exactly on that call. We have 7 cases from the Pulse to San Bernardino a few years back to Sandy Hook. I think the FBI was called beforehand, to the Boston bombing. The FBI was called
Go
beforehand.
back to 9/11. The FBI had all sorts of intel on it too. But
Yeah,
Dash
there's
Patel, this FBI is taking threats seriously, and I think they actually they understand the difference between the fact that everybody talks with homicidal language right now, and that there are serious threats coming, particularly from online fringes or from overly online fringes.
well said. So let's move on a little bit. before the show, you have an amazing article that people could find it at Aruch Sheva. It's a fairly big Israeli newspaper. It's ARUTZ, the number 7. Just Google it, and you have this a brilliant article. They snagged it, I guess, from your personal Substack account.
Hmm.
And I like your shock that when I told you, you didn't even know about this until I told you. Wow, you made it into our route.
Nobody tells me when I get syndicated places.
Yeah, it's a great article, and I encourage everybody to read Guy's Substack account. He tags us with elders as elders of Zionism now, so you could pretty much read them in both places. It's fantastic stuff. And I asked you before the show something that I think is very important. And you have a lot of sources in the government. You have a lot of sources on the ground. And when you read papers in Israel, the left or the right, most of them are all left. So
Mhm.
the idea that people keep still throwing around is that this is somewhat still coordinated, that Trump and Bibi, something we thought 3 months ago. This is something we spoke about 3 months ago that we thought was going on, and maybe it was at that time, that there was this the theater of the absurd going on, that the two of them were playing this game together. And I asked you before the show, is there any evidence right now that there's coordination going on between Bibi and Trump? And what was your answer?
Nobody that I've spoken to, nobody that I'm speaking to, has given any indication that they know that there's any theatre. I will say that doesn't dismiss the possibility that it exists, but that possibility seems smaller than it ever has. A lot of people I know who weren't or didn't always know what was going on, but had a lot of faith, are not feeling a lot of that faith right now. Um, and yeah, the sentiment in Israel is that we have to adapt to a situation where the United States is actively undermining our ability to defend ourselves at this point and has no intention of changing its status.
And
So
it's
it's
and listen,
concerning.
but let's be honest, and we discussed this the other day. I'm not worried. We're not really worried about Israel, and that's the truth. Israel has survived far worse than the rhetoric that's being spread around. We're worried about America. Okay, you're one of the as we discussed when we started this, we wanted to do different week subjects, and one of the things we wanted to discuss is Guy's amazing fascination with the creation of America, how it was created, how the founders, what they based it on, and we're going to get to that, God willing, very soon. So this, we are the elders of Zionism, but at the same time, we are very. I'm American. I love my country, and Guy loves America more than any. Being an Australian, now an Israeli, loves America more than anybody I've ever met. I mean, you're like Gladstone, who Ben Stein often brings up. Who talked about the Constitution being the greatest. I'm going to
Uh,
script the.
the single greatest piece of human literature, the second greatest piece of human literature after the Bible.
Thank you very much. So for those listening, this isn't. But I want to say something, Guy, and anybody that's listened to this show knows how much I talk about messaging. I've been saying this forever, and it's not our fault that it's not the citizens' fault that when we get messaging from the White House that's horrific, that it tears people apart. So the White House could have done should have done. I don't know if what do you think the messaging was worse with this or Epstein? And I'm not kidding.
That's a hard ask. To be honest, I think that this is more catastrophic only because I think that the global impact and the amount of people that were reacting in real time to the Epstein messaging was close to zero. It didn't actually have any meaningful
Right.
impact on the world. Here, every misstep has consistently the missteps have realigned other players in the game, and even now you're seeing, you know, there are decisions being made right now about how Israel's going to operate through in the coming months, where the conflict isn't going away. Whatever Iran wants to say about Lebanon, there is still a terrorist organization taking potshots over the border on a daily basis. There are still civilians who can't go to their homes because of that. There are still Israeli soldiers being killed and injured almost on a daily basis. Right? The war doesn't go away because there's a memorandum of understanding signed in Switzerland. And pretending that it does is really, really horrible for Israelis, because it means that now every decision to defend the country that's being made is being calculated against, will this somehow inspire the wrath of Donald Trump? Um, and that shouldn't be part of the calculus when you're talking about your closest ally.
I think you're 100% correct, and I think that's extremely well said. And on our last episode, we discussed this even before it was starting to really happen. And we said the worst person that could be selling this is JD Vance. And obviously he's part of this deal. Him supposedly him Witkoff and Kushner made this deal, MOU, whatever you want to call it. Um, but he's been all over TV. And Guy, I got to say something that nothing that is good needs to be sold this hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, and I want people to really just break that down in their minds for a second. You go to buy a car, you go to buy something. It's like, if you want the car, you haggle a little bit, but at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, if you really want it, you walk out with it. And the story, the only time there's ever really an issue is if you bought a lemon.
Yeah, and look, I
And
think one of the things that you're seeing here is it's not just that it needs to be sold this hard. It's how often new pieces of information slip out into the conversation and then need to be explained themselves. Right. So again, it's going back to your lemon. Oh, well, what's this? Oh, well, never mind. That's just a scratch. Well, where did it have a scratch for? Oh, well, there was an accident. What was the accident? Oh, well, it had a really, it's in the book. Oh, it says here that the chassis was damaged. Yeah, but it was only a little bit of damage. It says here that every additional piece of information that comes out shows you that the person trying to sell you the lemon knows far more than they're telling you, and they keep slipping up and putting more of it out into the conversation. Even today, there was the conversation about, um, I believe the direct quote. There was a whole part of the conversation where President Trump was talking about uh, Al Shara in Syria, and how he's our man and he does what we tell him, and us and Erdogan and some others. And then you're saying, well, hold on, are you trying to tell us that Syria is now a proxy controlled by the some sort of an alliance between the United States and Turkey that we're not aware of? And who are these mysterious like, every answer raises more questions, and those questions never lead to an answer that is either positive or complete.
And he also brought up, when he said that, the president, he said, well, I mean, I hear people are happy about this. Well, they're not happy about this in Damascus. You're damn right they're not happy about this in Damascus, because they're two different sects of Islam.
Right. Not,
And
not, not, not to mention this idea of let's unleash the Sunni jihadis on the Shia jihadis and start a literal holy war. Doesn't sound like it's going to end. Like he's saying the Israelis have killed too many people in Lebanon, most of whom, by the way, were Hezbollah terrorists. And now we're talking about unleashing a million Sunni jihadis on a couple of 100,000 Shiite jihadis, and just let's see what happens. Um, Look, I know it was an off the cuff idea, but it's the sort of thinking that shows that there's a much bigger game being played than what's being shared. And I think a big part of the what feels very difficult to trust right now with this whole situation is that you can see how much is being hidden from you while you're being asked to sign off on it.
Yeah, I well said. And I think though there's a bigger issue. The bigger point is, I think the most bothersome and worrisome thing for a lot of us is that when you question, you're rebuked, you're
Hmm.
shamed. How dare you ask this question? And I'm an American citizen. We're allowed to ask any question we want to ask. So we're confused right now. It's causing a lot of infighting. This infighting could have been prevented had the details not have been released today. I think the New York Post posted the 14 points in this. I don't even know what you want to call it, because it keeps changing. Even that changes, right? It goes from MOU to peace plan back to it's just an MOU. They're going to re-sign it
Temporary,
today.
it's not final, it's
Right.
signed, but we have to sign it again, but maybe we won't.
Right. Now maybe JD Vance won't go to Switzerland on Friday. Wonder why. And it's confusing, and to ask questions is not against the law. And again, it doesn't mean you don't. It doesn't mean if you're a Trump supporter, you don't trust. You've lost all trust in Trump. You're just allowed to ask these questions.
Well, I mean, there's another thing here. Trust and faith are not the same thing. You can see that you're being deceived. You can see that there are things that you're not being told. You're being presented with a picture that looks very different from all of the evidence, to supporting evidence that's being presented along with it. To some extent, one of the things I've been noticing a lot having this discussion on Truth over the past 24 hours is there is a large contingent of Trump sycophants who are not thinking about what they're being told. They are not asking questions, and that is the danger. It's okay to ask questions. It's important to ask questions. And it's okay that the answer comes up. Yeah, you know what? We've looked at the information. $19.2 trillion of Qatari investment is a pretty good deal. Let's take it. Right? It's okay for the answers to satisfy your curiosity as to what's in it for you as an American. Not asking questions when you can tell that you're not being told the whole story, that's dangerous. That's cult behavior. We don't want to be a cult. If you're a conservative, you shouldn't take for granted that you should follow with blind trust. There is one person who you should follow with faith if you're a conservative, and that's you know God, the Creator, and
Yeah,
Jesus
no, I
Christ.
said that to somebody last night. It's so funny because I said that to somebody last night, and they had a response to that, and I was like, at that point, what am I going to do if what are you? There's no counter to that. But let's just go through some of these things that we know to be true 100%. It's the first thing that got them into trouble, or got JD Vance, was the $300 billion, right?
Mhm.
That was the first thing that got them into trouble. He couldn't have he didn't deny the $300 billion. And today Trump has obviously acknowledged the $300 billion, saying, well, almost none of it's coming from us,
Well,
right?
none of it is coming from the United States, as though that's the problem with giving $300 billion to the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Which, again, to put this in perspective, when when Obama signed the JCPOA with Iran, they were given $1.8 billion, and that was considered outrageous. Trump came in, canceled the JCPOA, said it was a terrible deal. Sanctioned Iran. We're gonna make them beg for they'll beg for us to welcome them back. Enter Joe Biden. Biden made a hostage deal with them to buy back 6 American prisoners for $6 billion. And again, the response from the same people that support President Trump today was, this is outrageous. Why would we give $6 billion to the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world? Obama gave them 1.8, and that was bad enough. Now Biden's giving them $6 billion. Outrageous. And now we're talking about giving them $24 billion of their own money that's being held because it was sanctioned, and an additional $300 billion of other people's money. Right? That's orders of magnitude worse than what we were outraged by not more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, listen.
And
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, and people are acting as though this is perfectly reasonable. We shouldn't be questioning the plan because, of course, now they said they'd behave.
Yeah, and one of the things he also brought up today, and this is something I've brought up in the past, was that our reserves are really low. And he pretty much openly said today that we didn't have enough bombs. We don't have enough missiles. Our reserves. We could have done this for another 4 weeks. And this is a massive story. And then he somehow threw Israel under the bus with the killing, them not joining the killing of Soleimani. Fine, Israel doesn't care. Bibi doesn't care about the insults being slung at him. Neither does, and the people of Israel, actually, they do care. They're starting to get, when you look at the polls, they're starting to get rather irritated by this stuff. But Guy, this is something that's sort of embarrassing with how much money we spend on defense. Is that we were running out of missiles. Now, I don't blame Donald Trump for this. This is a long time coming. We sent a lot of our equipment to the Ukraine. We raided Israel's stockpile that we had there to send to the Ukraine. So we were running out of missiles, and I really do think that this was one of the biggest reasons why we had the ceasefire. We were running out of interceptors, running out
So,
of missiles.
so let me call you up on that for a moment because I think it's actually a really important point because we weren't
Call
running
me
out
up
of.
or call me out.
No, call you up. I want to build on that for a moment because we weren't just running. We weren't. It wasn't that we were running out of bombs and we were running out of missiles. We were running out of the specific bombs and missiles that allowed us to fight this incredibly sophisticated 21st century humanitarian war. We were running out of precision munitions and interceptors. So it was harder for us to strike just the bad guys, and it was harder for us to take our time doing it while we were having rockets and missiles fired at us nonstop. Because there are more than enough good old fashioned dumb bombs in US and Israeli arsenals to flatten Iran from north to south and from east to west. And this is one of the things that when we talk about, one of the things that the president said in his press conference today was if it weren't for the United States, Israel wouldn't exist. It would have been bombed. It would have been bombed. And the answer is no. If it wasn't for the fact the United States supported Israel, Israel would have to fight an existential war, and you would have to take away these breaks of you would have to take away the restraint that we fight wars with in the modern era to try and actually try to defeat another country, not another regime, not to decapitate leadership, not to strike key facilities, but to bomb another country into submission. And rather than say we have to, rather than put the ultimatum to Iran saying, well, I guess we're running out of smart bombs. So you've got two choices: surrender or we switch to the dumb bombs and flatten
Yeah.
you. We ran away. And I think it's important to understand what this means about warfare because in 1939, when London was being bombed by the Luftwaffe and Dresden was being bombed by the RAF, it was a competition of will to see who was able to be most resilient and who was able to inflict the most harm on the other side. No harm was inflicted on America during this war. None. Some servicemen were tragically killed. That was tragic. Some planes fell out of the sky. Unfortunate. Nothing touched the US home front. There was no threat to the American home front. We lost a battle of will against ourselves because they were willing to let us kill them more than we were willing to kill them. This is an own goal.
Well, listen, I think you're 100% correct. But again, I really want to touch on this because this is the takeaway. listen, I know people that listen to the show. Obviously, we're Zionists. Obviously, our goal is to be on the offense. Obviously, the pot shots that President Trump is taking at Netanyahu or he's taking at Israel, it's fine. We'll survive. That we've survived throughout history. The last thing we're worried about is what's coming out of President Trump's mouth. I mean, that's just the reality. What should scare every American is this stockpile thing with the amount of money that we spend on defense every year. What is the new defense budget they're asking for? What was it? Two hundred.
1.2 trillion. The defense budget is enormous. It's 1.2 or 1.3 trillion dollars.
And I think they wanted to double whatever it is. It's an insane number. And going back to COVID, right when we realized our shelves were bare, um, this is one of those things, and you can ramp up really quickly. And I believe they're. I
Well,
think they're. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, well, this is the thing. This is what the sorts of 21st century precision munitions that we need, even ramping up wouldn't help. So they've ramped up the production of the THAAD rockets from what was 90 a year to about 400 a year. Those numbers are not relevant to the game that exists right now. At the end of the day, a ballistic missile is a giant pipe with a bunch of fuel and a bomb strapped to the front. In Israel, we used to joke that the Lebanese or the Hezbollah would fire Katyushot, which cost about $150 to make, and we'd fire a $50,000 interceptor to stop it. Right? And as much as it was joking, the $100 was a slight exaggeration, and the 50,000 was probably cheaper than what we were paying. And it's not funny because it's economically unfeasible, but it's also industrially implausible. Now, if you look at World War II, when the United States was able to switch its industrial capacity, and the United States, and at the beginning of World War II, had a massive amount of industrial capacity, far more than it has today, and it was able to take the greatest auto industry in the world and convert those those factories to making tanks, to making jeeps, to making bombs. It was able to take steel factories. It was able to take a massive industrial capacity and switch it to a war footing. But one of the things that was necessary for that was that tanks are actually were relatively simple machines, right? Jeeps are relatively simple machines. Bombs are relatively simple machines. You can't take an auto factory and get it to build a THAAD interceptor. You can't convert general capacity and get it to build these specialized munitions, which means if we're not willing to make the commitment to going to war for real, nothing we can do can move us to a place where we can actually get up to capacity. It's going to take 10 years to even build the infrastructure to start manufacturing a reasonable amount of sophisticated interceptors. We need to be on the offensive. We need to say, if you want to bomb us, we will flatten your country.
Yeah, no, I listen. I love that I brought this up because I love your answer, and I think your answer it's the truth, and I think it's a great answer. And that's the reality is we'll never catch up. And this was always Marco Rubio's point about their ballistic missiles, which apparently they're going to still be allowed to have Iran.
Because why shouldn't they if everyone else can have them?
Right. Why should that's according to President Trump, is that the the amount they're able to build, we're always, or that they still have, we will always be playing catch up. So we
It,
cannot, this idea, and Trump has it in his mind, and it's again, it goes back to the proportionality. We can't, wars aren't fought with proportionality. If you fight like that, you will lose. That is, I mean, that's just a fact. You will get beaten, or you will, or will witness what's going on, that they just know that you'll run out of time.
right. And at the end of the day, if you're at war with a nation, you're at war with a nation. And it is unfortunate for the people of that nation. And it is the responsibility of their government to protect them as best they can. It is the responsibility of your government to win the war. And I think one of the things that is one of the things that we talk about the least is that the most moral way to fight any war is brutally and quickly, because it doesn't matter how brutal you are. If the war lasts for a week, less people will die than if you're gentle and run and fight it for 7 years.
Well said. And there's one more thing I just want to discuss before I start asking you about the plan, about the points in the plan. Is there's this thing that keeps on coming out, which obviously has been since the beginning, is um is that the Mossad and Bibi somehow duped President Trump. Every report that has come out said the Mossad said this will take a year. This is not a short-term thing. There is nobody in there's no story you will find. I want people to understand this about the Israeli press. Their goal is to bring down Bibi Netanyahu. They hate him more than they hate
More
Bibi.
than the American press hates President Trump.
Exactly. Great way of saying it. The Israeli perfect way of saying that. They would if this was if there was any truth to Bibi somewhat hoodwinking or saying the Mossad, it would have gotten out by now. So that's just a fallacy. They never said they gave it a year, not 4 to 6 weeks, but a year. I just wanted just to clarify that because you keep on here, and I want people that listen to the show to be able to take the things you hear and make them fact based. And that's a fact. Um, you've read the 14 points of this deal. What concerns you? What do you take away from it?
Look, I mean, the entire thing concerns me.
I figured that was coming.
It, you know what? I have been looking at this through 100 different lenses over the last couple of days. I was bouncing some of my thoughts off of you the other day, trying to find a way that this made sense.
It wasn't the other day. It was last night. My God. Can I
It's
tell you
been a
something?
very long couple of days.
I just want to tell you something really funny though, because this is the truth. When you record 3 times a week and you're talking to different people, you forget who you said what to. You forget what day you said when what you said it. It could have been an hour ago for all I know that we discussed this. So I'm not I just was thinking about this like who did I say this to? And I said it to you. Did I say this to you or did I say this to somebody else?
Mhm.
I can't remember half the time. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. So I was saying, I one of the things I try to do is, and I'm more than open to doing, is steel manning the position that doesn't feel right to me. Right. So we went through a thought experiment of saying, well, if this deal did make sense, if this deal didn't look like a complete capitulation, how would it be playing out? Um, and what for starters, the fact that almost immediately there's money being released, and the Iranians are going to be able to start selling their oil doesn't look like, for me, that's not a giant red flag. That's just something to circle. Why? Because the president needs to flood the market with oil right now. Part of the goal is to flood the market with oil, and if some of that oil is Iranian oil, so be it. Because you can always take their money on the way back, right? That would be reasonable. But when you look at the sorts of things being discussed, first of all, let's start from the fact that the entire MOU starts from the maximalist position of the Iranians. It includes Lebanon and the proxies. It includes reparations for damage inflicted during the war. That's what the $300 billion is, just to be clear. That's reparations for the damage inflicted on Iran while losing a war. Or winning a war, I
But
suppose.
make clear that it's the $300 billion that's going to be spent that we destroyed. That the air defenses were
Right.
destroyed.
To
That
replace all the things we destroyed, which were ostensibly their navy, their weapons manufacturing, their missile cities, the air defenses. Now, again, it's true that they have people, and I think one of the things that both JD Vance and the president have said is that there's 91 million people in Iran, and they need food and they need water and they need electricity, and all of that is true. But the IRGC doesn't care about that.
right.
In fact,
You know what? It's just I'm so happy you just brought that up. And sorry to interrupt, but I'm so happy you just brought that up because the fallacy is that the war is what caused this the inflation in Iran, all
Mhm.
the lack of water, the every bad thing in Iran was caused by the Ayatollah and the mullahs robbing the country blind and spending every single bit of money on these missiles, these underground caves, everything.
Well,
Nothing was spent.
it's even more than that. They also they created an entirely corrupt system which robbed the country blind while waste. Some of the money was devoted to the war. A lot of it was just highway robbery. And if you really want to get deep into the weeds, I've got a white paper that I wrote with Rebecca Balsef on the Middle East Forum's website that talks about this. But the level of corruption in the way that they ran the country has led to the fact that they have a energy crisis, they have a food crisis, they have a water crisis, and they have a ground sinkage crisis because they've used up so much groundwater, they've depleted so much groundwater that their cities are literally sinking. Before the war, I don't know if you remember this, but they were talking about the fact that they might have to move the capital to the coast
Yeah,
and in Tehran. The numbers are terrifying. The numbers were before the war. It was looking like you were looking at it. The situation was looking like we would have 15 to 20 million water refugees coming out of Iran in the next 10 years. That's how dire the situation there already was, right? So to assume that this government somehow prioritizes the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow was a Westerner, right? Maslow was not a theocratic Islamist because their hierarchy starts with jihad. Their hierarchy starts with the cause of their holy war, and to hell with the people. They killed 40,000 people in 2 days and they didn't flinch. They didn't blink. They don't care. 6 months later, apparently we don't care either. I mean, we do. You and I still think about it and think that it's horrible and feel like the Iranian people have been betrayed and all sorts of other things. But the Europeans are rushing to get back into trading with the Iranians and get their oil, which again, oil is good. Energy is important. But for people that have spent the better part of the last 2.5 years lecturing the world about the importance of protecting civilians from the violence of war and all of those other things, and trying to charge every Israeli that travels the world with some sort of war crime, you would think that it would take them a bit longer than 6 months to get over the massacre of 40,000 civilians, 40,000 protesters, but it didn't.
yeah. It's interesting you say that because I was saying to somebody last night. Listen, Israel has, it's interesting. Israel is willing to die for Iranians' freedom because they realize how connected it is. They realize that Iran having, so Israel has a lot of skin in this game, other than just, I mean, like this false notion that's been spread around about the Greater Israel Project, right? The Greater Israel Project. No, the Greater Israel Project is called Survival, Guy. That's the only Greater Israel Project.
In 1973, they built a pipeline from Iran to Israel. It was the Iran-Israel oil pipeline, which was supposed to bring Iranian oil to Europe. Right? It wasn't a greater Israel. It was Israel and Iran cooperating for the benefit of Europe and their own mutual benefit along the way. The Islamic Revolution torpedoed all of that. That pipeline became an artifact of a time that disappeared just like that. And I think, just by the way, while we're bringing that up, this is one of the things that we don't think about. Revolution isn't like the sort of change that we've grown accustomed to, where things degrade over time and things gradually change. Right, the West that we know is not the West that we grew up in, but it's been 30 years that we've been seeing it slip. Revolution happens like that. One morning you go to sleep and you live in a free liberal country where you can wear mini skirts. And I mean, I wouldn't wear a mini skirt; it's not a good look on me. But
You never
were I
know.
to choose to do so, I could. Um, you can listen to rock and roll music. You could pass for someone in London in the same era,
Yeah, no, I mean,
and the
look,
next minute,
the pictures are beautiful.
jobs and beatings.
The pictures, and that's important for people to know. The pictures are stunning. The thing is, the Iranian people, they never see those pictures. You know, you're talking about 4 generations or 5 generations ago, guy. They don't see the textbooks. They've been destroyed. Everything has been destroyed prior to the Ayatollah coming out. It's like literally if you see a movie, a dystopian, nightmarish movie of, you know, people looking at artifacts of what like was past, that's Iran. You have some people that have hidden their artifacts, hidden the pictures of what it was like, but for the most part, so many of those people have never seen what it was before the Shah,
Before the Ayatollah.
before the Ayatollah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. But I just think it's important because we're in a very revolutionary period right now, and I think people need to understand that it can happen. It
Yeah,
can
yeah,
happen to big countries that were doing very well and were very liberal and trying to be pro-Western. And when it happens just like that. You go to sleep under a democratic country, and you wake up with Zoran Mamdani as your communist dictator.
it's funny. I had written an article one time, and I think I brought this up where, yeah, for the American Spectator, and it was about Bernie Sanders, and they titled it "You went to bed with Bernie and you woke up with Hillary." And I wish I would have thought of that title. And but yeah, listen. Honestly, we're living in very precarious times, and the only thing I think that prevents revolution, like you're talking about, is the ability to ask questions. When you stop having the ability to ask questions, and you see it online, you see it. You go on X, go on Truth. You see some of the most civilized minds that have been nothing but complimentary to President Trump, that have critically thought many things, whether it's insurrectionist Barbie or whoever it is, being slammed, just being slammed for or take my account, just asking questions, saying nothing. I mean, it's so amazing. I mean, listen, Tucker Carlson called Trump the Antichrist. Megyn Kelly a couple weeks ago accused him, alleged rapist. I mean, the list goes on of what former supposed Trump supporters have said. Anybody that dare question this deal, we get.
Well, let's take it a step further to the rumors that have been coming out of the White House that the deal, basically people said the deal is happening, and there have been threats being thrown around that the people that objected to the deal would be summarily dismissed. Now, we haven't seen that happen, so I'm hoping that it's just a rumor being spread by someone vicious. But the fact that that's the way we're talking, that's moving into a form of tyranny that I'm
I'm
not
so
sure.
happy you brought that up. I got to be honest with you, Guy. I mean, I'm a little scared, but that was a scenario I was not thinking about, and that's why we have you here.
Look, I read too much news.
To skip
Um,
me and but I want to get just we are on limited time. I just want to ask you a few more questions. Do you think President Trump right now? I'm being honest. Do you think he has buyer's remorse? I mean, this is like a guy that doesn't, that makes a deal. He runs with that deal, and there's no explanations after. Even when you listen to him on so many other things, the amount of explanations that he's had to do on this, you got to know, he's got to think he bought a lemon. And because the only time, I mean, you don't threaten people if you bought gold.
well,
You have
so
gold.
it's really interesting because right after the deal got signed, he's gone off to the G7 conference in Europe, which used to be the seven most powerful economies in the Western world getting together to decide how they would work together for the betterment of mankind. Right? It was one of those utopian sort of utopian new world, a new world order sort of post-war, integrated economy ideas. For some reason, this time around, it was the same G7 countries that usually show up, and all of the Arab countries. Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, the I guess the Iranians weren't there, the Saudis, Qataris, Emiratis, and look, we're talking about trade deals with the Middle East again. All of a sudden, we've got Macron congratulating Trump on what it looks to be a very effective end to a war. Now, I'm not.
I know. I got to tell you, I'm like listening to people. It's so interesting. Like, so people going, "Oh, look, Rand Paul agreed with this,"
That's right.
and I'm like, 2 weeks
The
ago,
last thing you want is to be told by the Prime Minister of France that your outcome of a war was good.
right. The last thing you want to be told is by Macron or Starmer or any of these people, or have Rand Paul come and say, "I'm proud of this deal." Good. If these people are saying it, you might want to start rethinking.
I also think it's worth pointing out that there's a lot of people calling the people that are against this deal hawkish.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. First of all, hawkish, not an insult. Hawks are pretty cool birds. Certainly cooler than doves. Let's be honest. Second of all, that label
Should
is
we title
being.
that episode, "I'd rather be a hawk than a dove"?
I think that's a great title for the episode. Or a badass American eagle coming in with like Harley tattoos. And
But
I'm
but
always.
but I'm not familiar with birds as much as you are. You have children. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, you know everything about everything. Are doves prey?
Doves are definitely prey if you're a hawk.
Okay.
And everything's prey if you're a bald eagle. Just saying. This is one of those America moments. But the people being accused of being hawks are some of the most cautious politicians out there. Like Lindsey Graham, sure, he's hawkish. He likes war. And he likes war against bad guys, and I don't think that makes him a bad person. But Marco Rubio has never been a hawk, but he has always had a very sophisticated understanding of the way the world works and a very clear moral position on the world. So when Marco Rubio is being accused of being a hawk, you really need to worry about who's hiding behind the label of a dove.
I think that's perfectly said. And yeah, listen, they're throwing obviously they're throwing the tropes out at everybody. Hawk, neocon, all these different things, and it's like it just doesn't work anymore. And it's sort of like, as you discussed last week, President Trump today called, Plattner. And he's right that the Democrats are running a Nazi, but that doesn't seem to bother people anymore, right?
But let's be honest, the Ayatollahs have a lot of Nazism in their ideology too, and apparently we're okay with them now.
Yeah. What a strange world. Anyway, as we're wrapping up, I want to say, like, to David and Turbo, they don't have to always agree with us. I think that's what makes it is like, our two producers, whoever's on the show, we don't, or us on the show, we don't have to agree with each other all the time. Okay, we're not asking for blind loyalty. In order to produce this show, you have to agree with us with whatever you say. Okay, it's ridiculous. And if we get to that place in America, and we are at that place in many ways, that scares me more than any midterms ever will. With that being said, you can find us everywhere at eldersofzionism.com. That's eldersofzionism.com. I encourage everybody to check out our Substack, which is eldersofzionism.com, or you can find Guy it's a Guy thing on Substack. So follow us everywhere. Give us that subscribe, that like. It's extremely helpful. And we hope you got something out of the show today. And I think we'll be back tomorrow, the next day. I think tomorrow we'll be back. And with that being said, I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and good night, world, wherever you are. God bless you all.